massive welcome to everybody. How big a massive welcome can I give you? Massive. And today is part of our festival, the Biotech Gate Digital Festival, of which we're so proud to put on the Coffee Buddies, which is a group of people, an idea, a community, whatever you want to call it, which is designed to entertain, inform and engage. And it's on cameras on event. You never know when I might say your name and you can join in the conversation, but it goes way back to when I was told that people only arrive when their voice is heard, and it's so true. And we've had a fantastic couple of days already. This, I think, is number 12, is it, Graham, of our
it's at least number 12, yeah.
It's now our number 12, and we've been navigating our way through all sorts of things, fascinating things, you know, from different businesses to the great XY factor, which is starting to become well known and well established, which is a competition for startups, scale ups, anything ups really. And it's where we had a panel of different companies, all sorts of companies, present to a group from MSD, the venture arm, and their commercial arm, as well as other investors, and it was a blast. And we've got that blast occurring again today. What time, Graham, is it today?
We've got 3 o'clock, so it's the next session, 3 o'clock UK time, of course.
7 companies. They're just the sort of people you want to meet, so come along and hear it. And before we forget, we've also got an app. Everybody has an app, and we've got one.
I know.
We've got an app. And
I've dropped the URL into the chat already, Tony.
Oh yeah, fantastic. It's called Mighty Networks, and we've got it. Fantastic.
So it's like LinkedIn, but it's for our community only.
And today we did our first session was on mindsets and the mindset of an entrepreneur and the mindset of investors. And it's my pleasure to introduce Nicola as our talking partner today. To catalyze our brains, but it was a very interesting thing, and I will be asking Nicola to tell us who she is and what she does, but I'm also interested in the customer mindset, so maybe there's a bit of a theme we could get going today about what's in the customer's mindset. But Nicola, maybe you could just introduce yourself. Who are you, where are you, and what do you do?
Who am I? Well, Nicola Wall, and company is Afortiori Development. I am currently in the Porter Shed, which is in the Galway City Innovation District in the west of Ireland, where we have, it's actually where we set up almost 5 years ago, and we have another office in the UK. And so we were a startup CRO in 2016, and essentially just Tony, you know, when we talked the other day, it was about doing business differently, and I really like that phrase, because that's exactly what our company is about. It's about doing business differently as much as we can, and it's all about, our business is about helping people design and manage clinical trials, all shapes and sizes, all types of products.
Fantastic. And I mean, Nicola's great. I just have to tell everyone Nicola's great. We could just underline that. But I mean, after that, Nicola, just maybe, you know, you're in the CRO business, the clinical CRO business. I mean, just tell us a little bit, what's in the customer's mind now? Who you know, what's your customer's mind wanting? Are they want out of a CRO? And maybe you can share that with us.
Yeah, I mean, what they want, Tony, is they want to get evidence on their products. But I'll tell you it's kind of funny, because actually in some respects we think the customer actually forgets that that's really what they want and what they need. So they come to us as they come to, you know, other CROs, wanting people to be able to help them to get their product into a clinical trial so that they can test it and get data about what it does and how safe it is and how effective it is as soon as possible for the least amount of money possible. So in a nutshell, I mean, that's what CROs do. Some obviously, you know, we've got folks as well that have got the preclinical side of things, but essentially that's what CROs are supposed to be in the business to do, is to help companies to get those products to a point where there's enough evidence about how they work. And I've just probably condensed one of the most complex systems in terms of what needs to happen for customers. I think, in my opinion anyway, having been in this industry for over 20 years, it is pretty much, I think, one of the most really, I say complex, it's just all the moving parts that have to go together, and you know, what our customers are looking for are people to really help them navigate that in a nutshell.
And do you get a sense, Nicola, I mean, we talked earlier about that click that occurs between yourself and a customer, you know, what is it that do you know what that click is?
Yeah, it's about relationships, Tony, and I think that's, you know, and again, part of this whole community that we're in, aren't we? It is really about, do they trust us enough to take their product into what's going to potentially be an extremely difficult, you know, phase in its life, to test it. And, you know, they're really putting our faith in us to do what we say we're going to do. And I think, as I mentioned the other day, one of the reasons I set up Afortiori was because we felt we couldn't do that in the positions that we were in other companies. We were part of large bureaucratic organizations that are fantastic, and don't get me wrong, they have their place and we need them because they run, you know, the huge behemoth trials that are, you know, have to be run all the time. But at the end of the day, we work with a lot of smaller companies that a lot of them are very research naive, and they are looking for people that they can get on the phone to and go, is this what's going to happen? You know, help us, tell us what we need to do. So it is very much about a hand holding. And, you know, that's, people say that it's about partnerships and it's about all those things, but it truly is. Like, that's not just paying lip service. It really is about that.
So that's this idea of trust. I mean, you and I click, and Nicola, you and I click, and it's interesting what makes a click that you can trust someone, isn't it? I mean, is it branding? Is it contact? Is it, you know, what we do often is describe a set of features and benefits that we give to the customer on a slide, don't we? And we show it to them. Do you think people are looking at that, or are they looking over it and actually imagining, can I really work with these people?
Do you know what, Tony? I think for the customer, if I'm looking at our current client base, it's very much been about building that trust and building that relationship. You know, I do think there is a personal element, whether people want to admit that or not, there genuinely is. And we have found that, you know, but, you know, the flip side of that is, as a young company, you know, what we've also struggled with is that brand recognition, and is that, I suppose, company track record. All the people that we have together have honestly hundreds of years worth of clinical expertise, but we're still in some respects, we're still even considered a startup ourselves, even though we're not, and we've been running studies, and, you know, we've already worked with, you know, over 65 clients. And, you know, there's this, you know, there's brand recognition with some of those bigger CROs, and some of those CROs that have a longer track record. And the only way that us as a business are really trying to deal with that is to keep getting out there and building that relationships with people and word of mouth, because we did an analysis, and pretty much, I think it was 95% of the clients that we'd had come to us through recommendations from other people. I mean,
this is the really interesting thing about our ecosystem, isn't it? Yeah. That you've got a lot of moving parts in it that actually, you know, how do you know people exist, really? I mean, is it a chance thing? Is it awareness? What
it's, yeah, and it is, Tony, because again, there's so many great providers out there, but it's, you know, we live in a different world now. We live in a world that's very virtual. We live in a world where, you know, things like LinkedIn are of paramount importance in terms of how you also convey that. And we've, you know, as a company, we've taken the stance that, you know, we want to convey who we are and our dedication to what we do, that it's genuine, and that we're there to help people that want to work with smaller companies and build those relationships and build that trust. But it's almost like a full-time job getting the brand name out there. And again, I'm sure loads of people will identify with that as a core issue that takes time and it takes investment.
Almost at the point you've got brand recognition, it's lost its personal thing, hasn't it? Because by definition, you recognize the brand, not the person. And I mean, and I think that's a really interesting, and the world of clinical, where do you think it's wandering to now? Is it wandering to greater computer sophistication? Do you see that in the future you're going to go into a room and it's going to have loads of computers and you're going to be able to do simulations and things, or is it going to be the same as it's always been, which again is relationship based, isn't it, Nicola?
Yeah,
The doctor relationship.
Do you know what, Tony? I think it's all of the above. And, you know, the fact is we actually have all of that sophistication now. We've had modeling, we've had, you know, and we've worked with some of our partner companies that have done a superb job in terms of this virtual modeling and this ability to be able to predict potentially, you know, what kind of patient numbers and also patient groups you need. That's already there. But do I think it's going to happen more? Sure. I mean, you know, let's face it, the last 14 months has meant that everyone's had to adapt, and clinical trials are no different. However, you'll never be able to get away from the fact that it's about people, it's about patients, it's about, you know, hospitals, the people that, you know, doctors and nurses and all the staff that run them. So I think what you'll see is, you know, people talk again, there's a lot of things about doing virtual trials, and that's great. And it does have a place, but it doesn't replace those relationships. It doesn't completely, you know, basically get rid of the need to have that personal relationships and have people travel into site to still meet their doctors if and when they can. But I think what it does is it provides opportunity more than anything to say this technology is here, you know, how could we utilize it best on this particular study? Or, you know, how do we then come up with a combination of how we utilize this great, you know, these platforms for telehealth, these platforms for remote monitoring. I mean, again, we've been doing remote monitoring for a long time. That's not new.
I mean, and data, Nicola, I mean, data and data privacy, and I mean, is that something to be thoughtful about as we move forward?
Yeah, big time, Tony. It has to be, especially when people are going to be using their trusty mobile phones to send data.
Where's the data going to go, Nicola, from the trusted mobile phone? You know, where does it go?
We'll go into a few different places. It'll you know, potentially go straight into an electronic patient health record, or it's sort of going to go into an electronic data capture system.
But is it going to go via the cloud?
Yeah.
So I mean, so what we're going to have is like, you know, data privacy is going to be very interesting because it's data you know, you're going to have data preserving computing, really, privacy preserving computing, so that you can prevent. So there's going to be wadges of data all around the place, isn't there?
There is already, Tony. It's been happening, you know, and again, some of the bigger companies have been doing this, and they've been doing it really well, you know, and there's, you know, I think, we spoke about this before, but there's a more fundamental component to that, is really helping patients understand exactly what it is they're consenting to about their data. And we've seen changes in that, and changes in how we have to convey that, of course, and also changes in how we as CROs and hospitals and all, you know, all of the players, how are we providing the assurance and the systems? The systems are there, they're built, they work great, we know they work great, but I think there's still a fundamental issue here about educating patients about what, you know, where their data is going and why, and how important that is, so that they understand it, and that they realize that that's exactly what's happening, and that they're okay with it more than anything.
I mean, Nicola, I think we can talk all day, and I think Graham is doing various hand movements at me behind, which I love, but I never know what they mean. But we've got the hand movements. Can I just thank Nicola, and just we'll move on to some questions, Graham, before we move into the group?
Yeah, absolutely. I think can you put your hands up if you've got any questions for Nicola? Richard, we'll go first. Thanks, Richard.
Hi, Nicola. This is Richard Darren with Cernios Group. I totally agree about relationships. Otherwise, you know, all the training goes out the window if you don't establish the relationships and accountability between the people that are actually taking data, making sure that the sites are trained up, dealing with Dr. Famous, you know, and, you know, all of
Dr. Famous.
Yes.
the people that invented the techniques, so they feel like they don't have to go through training.
That's right. Yeah.
So I'm totally sympathetic. Let's talk later, but I'm glad someone's saying it out loud.
We love some of your language, Richard. It's very, very good. I'm writing it down. It's good. So we have one more question, and then we could start moving into Graham. Is that
who's gonna? I'm just who's gonna put their hand up? I think I'm gonna pick on Lucia because I haven't seen her for ages. Yeah, yeah, that's right. I must admit you came in late. That's not really fair, is it? Or is that fair?
I'm sorry. A previous call went over time, so I actually just got it at the end of the discussion about trust and having data, and I've just had a look at your website actually, Nicholas. If Graham, you were asking me to ask a question.
Yes, if you'd like. Yeah.
So I mean, I understand. Then you are a would you call yourself like a specialist CRO or a niche?
No, we call ourselves a boutique CRO, but only because we love dealing with a lot of smaller, medium-sized companies. And I'll be honest, there's other great CROs out there that can run all the really huge, all singing, all dancing trials. But for us, we really do want to work with companies that potentially, this is their first time running a study. They're well funded. May I just add the horrible discussion about money, but I also like to say that for us as a business, the stance that we've taken is that we're therapeutic area agnostic. So we've run trials in lots and lots of different areas. And again, because our whole team is comprised of lots of different folks that have run studies, and what we believe our core expertise is very much around trial operations. And that's, of course, the whole soup to nuts of getting the right study designed, getting it out to the right locations. And, as a CRO, that should be your core business. Your core business should be about how do you get a trial set up and running in the right way, whatever the product may be, to get the right sites, get the right patients, and of course, get all your data at the end of it. So
interesting.
May I ask if you specialize in early phase? Because you said that you work with small, not very experienced, and I was wondering if how you could be therapeutic as a therapeutic area agnostic in terms of identifying sites, because that would you not need like a therapeutic area expertise?
No.
I don't know.
I know that there's some CROs that do that, and they do that extremely well. But actually, if you go through a proper feasibility process the way you should for anything, then that should help you find the right sites. I mean, of course, for phase one, we already know, there's accredited centers, there's some non-accredited centers, but that's for phase one. What we deal with, when I say early phase as well, with the proof of concept studies. So you don't need to go through a normal, because for medical devices of different classifications that are not, for your class 3s, you don't need to go through a phase one center. So you just need to find the right hospital, and we've actually, we've also started this whole collaboration with a company where we're looking at how do we run trials effectively in the community so people only have to go into their GPs. So we always say to clients, consider exactly where the right site is for your study, because again, I think as Richard rightly pointed out, working with Dr. Famous is not necessarily the best and right approach for your study, and a lot of them are clustered in some of these places. So we always say, keep an open mind. Let's do a feasibility process where you can find some great clinicians and some great supporting research hospitals. God only knows we've got loads of them all around the world. So let's all give them all a fair chance.
We got a couple of questions now. I've got a couple of quick questions. Adam Wood first, and then we'll go to Fred. So Adam.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Graham. My point is really around levels of innovation and change, you look at the conference agendas and the headlines, for the keynotes and things like that, and lots of mentions of AI and patient centricity and those sorts of things. But what I'm interested in really getting Nicola's perspective on is slightly less revolutionary change, because I think that revolutionary change can just scare people and drives them to be more conservative, actually. Most of my customers that I interact with can't do risk-based monitoring, for example, right? You know, yet it's been around for at least 10 years, you know, the roots are even longer. And that's despite the regulation.
Around since the dawn of monitoring, if you know what you're doing, but that's
absolutely, and that's despite the
monitoring. Risk-based, but hey, let's go with that.
Yeah, and that's despite regulators saying, you know, risk-based monitoring is a really good idea. So I just
really,
it struck us at my clinic that one of the things people need to embrace a bit more is slightly more incremental innovation. Just do the change. Just do a little bit of change. Next time you do a study, don't just do it the same as you did last time. Make one change. You don't have to you know, doesn't have to be a revolution, but just get your perspective on that.
Yeah, and exactly. And actually, I did a lot of change management stuff early in my career, and it's a really, to me, it's a fundamental thing about, you know, you have to be careful about why you're trying to get at with that change, and especially in the world of clinical. Like we actually had a bit of a conundrum last week where there was just a really great potential add-on piece of work that we were thinking of doing with a client about patient retention. But we realized that the client's appetite for adding on just another layer of something different just wasn't there. And in the end, as much as it might have been a great idea, we kind of had to make the assessment that for their benefit and for the benefit of the study and the timelines, you know, it just wasn't the right opportunity, but that it will come up in other opportunities. So I think, you know, you have to assess what new piece of kit are you getting, or what new type of technology are you using, and why, and really, as opposed to risk-based monitoring, what's the risk approach to you doing any kind of change to your study? Because you still need to make sure you're meeting your timelines. If you've got commercial investors breathing down your neck about your milestones, you know, you need to have the right perspective, I think, Adam, about what's right for the study, what's right for you as a sponsor, what's right for you as the CRO trying to get it over the line for them.
It all begins with a why, doesn't it? And we're going to go with Fred, and then we'll go to Alex after Fred.
Yeah, Nicola, very interesting. I really love people who start CROs, and actually started one
That's
myself.
Right, Fred, you did one yourself. You mentioned that.
And but when I looked at your webpage, when I started line, I sort of went from the back end, meaning not the back end, sort of like the end result. So the analysis part, the biostatus, I'm a biostatistician. So I analyze trials, and then basically I said, okay, I can analyze this, but the protocol is so poorly written, especially the statistical methodology section. So then I said, and these were for big companies. I mean, I'm in Basel, Switzerland. So some of you obviously know who I'm referring to.
Not naming any names.
and then I do that, and then they had.
It was actually Tony, wasn't it? Sorry, carry on, Fred.
Well, no. But there too, when you for the data that was receiving, so then I added monitoring to it. So I said, okay, I can go and get the data to make sure that they're doing. So on your webpage, I'm just missing the biostats part.
Oh, and you know what, Fred, it's an interesting thing you bring up, because actually one of the things that kept us busy last year when, you know, so many trials were put on hold was encouraging companies to really look at trial design. And one of the ways we started doing that was introducing this idea of doing a clinical strategy workshop. And what that ended up doing was dovetailing into trial design for those exact reasons, Fred, because one of the things that I found through my career that was extremely frustrating, and Liz, my fabulous co-founder and colleague up there in the right-hand corner, the same thing, and then all of us did. You just got handed one too many really rubbish protocols that had not been thought through properly. And essentially, no matter who you were, you were set up for failure, because the study operationally was almost scuppered from the beginning. And it was the single most soul-destroying thing to realize you were handed a study that it was almost immediately going to have to go for an amendment, because it had not been thought through from, you know, whatever about your sample size design, which, you know, again, we talk a lot about to our potential clients and helping them understand what it means to come up with a hypothesis and why that's so important, and, you know, those kinds of things. But really about understanding, that everything that you want to collect will influence the number of patients, the sites, and that's all done at the beginning with your protocol. So we've actually ended up doing quite a lot of that. And I have to be very honest, the website, we haven't even had a chance to look at it properly. And people are like, what have you been doing for the last year? Well, you know, and luckily we've been really busy, but it's, thank you for the feedback, by the way. I really appreciate that. So, but
Right.
a proper trial design for anyone, any CRO, any sponsor, please, please, please. If you're a CRO, push back on it if you think it's rubbish or questionable. If you're a sponsor, please listen to people that know that have lived and breathed it about what the feedback they're trying to give you, because it will make the difference to your study.
Great, thanks, Nicola. With one more quick question before we go into the breakout rooms from Alex. Alex, if you'd like to go forward.
I'll keep it quick. It's fantastic to see another small CRO doing really, really well. Part of what we do, obviously, is speaking with sponsors and biotechs on a really regular basis, and you know we're starting to see a lot of them wanting to interact and use the small and niche CROs and perhaps using the big organisations. Something they're always keen to know from us is what really will set you apart and make you different from maybe some of the other smaller CROs or the bigger ones. What would you say is sort of a USP for yourselves?
There's two things, and honestly, this is not meant to be trite, but the most important one is our people. And we're lucky, we operate a bit of a different model. We have a mixture of folks that work full-time, but also contract folks that are very, very experienced and have no interest in working full-time. But because they're so experienced, they can get stuff done in lightning quick time. And you know, a big thing as well, having been on the other side of the under-promise, you know, the over-promising and the under-delivering, was having a stable team. And that's really, really important for us, is that, you know, you get the people that you're assigned to, and there's a big understanding about how important that is, you know, and that's about nurturing the right people and keeping them as part of the organization and giving them somewhere to work that they really enjoy. So me and Liz think we do a pretty good job of that. We have some absolutely amazing people, and again, a lot of them keep a low profile, and a lot of them, you know, I'm sure some of you have come across this, but there's been a terrible tendency in our industry for staff poaching. So you know, we have a lot of folks that just, they're not interested in LinkedIn. We're like, would you like to, you know, go on LinkedIn? They're like, no. So, but they're there. They're fabulous people, and I really do. And we have a wonderful electronic data capture system that Liz and I shopped long and hard for, because we were really keen to get something that did what it said it would do. And so I suppose those two things. Right, Graham.
Great. Well, we've got it's going to be the mix up now. Time for the mix up and a bit of networking. So, Tony, we'd just like to say, you know, thanks very much.
Thank you to Nicola. They're fab, in case we lose anyone. And now we're going to go into the breakout rooms. But Nicola, come back again, because we really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you, Tony.
So I'm going to. You're welcome. I'm going to just 10 minutes in each room. So keep your introductions sharp and enjoy your networking.